Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're just going to give it a few seconds and wait until 9 o'clock before we officially start. But we've gone live on various platforms. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and we've got a number of people joining us on the Zoom as well. If you are watching live on one of those other places and you're not on the Zoom with us and you do want to join us on the Zoom, then you can do that by going to safetyroundtable.co.uk and registering. It's totally free, but that just means you can come and join us live and in person and make the most of the experience. However, if you are watching along, welcome and thanks for joining us today. And you can join in via the chat, and I'll do my best to monitor the chat. Probably the best chance of joining in is if you're on LinkedIn, because that's easiest for me to monitor whilst we are doing this. So it's 9 o'clock, so let's get started. Welcome today to this safety roundtable session. And I'm not sure if I can swear or not, probably not. So we'll say, are we S*** at safety? In other words, are we not very good at safety? So clearly a topic that lots of us are going to be interested in, passionate about. And what I'd love to do to start today is just get you to hit me up in the chat. So when you first heard the title of this week's roundtable, what was your immediate reaction? So you saw me either on last week's roundtable share the name of this, or you would have seen it on LinkedIn or in an email or in any number of other ways. So what were your thoughts when you first saw the title of this? So let me know in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to do a quick intro to myself for anybody that might be watching that hasn't, or joining us that hasn't come across me before. So my name is Christian Harris, and I run a business called Slip Safety Services. Every week I do a fair bit of content around safety and risk management. So I host this safety roundtable. I have a podcast as well called the Safety and Risk Success Podcast, which certainly at points in time has been the number one safety podcast on Spotify. And I do a LinkedIn newsletter and lots of LinkedIn content as well. My day job, as you probably gather from the name of my company, is all around the field of slips and falls. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. In that area, I've worked in some high-profile cases. The business has won some awards. We've got some great partnerships with people like AXA. We've got some good clients like Network Rail. We're going to talk about Network Rail today as well. Do a number of IOSH events and things like that. Over the years, we've helped several thousand sites to reduce the risk of slips and falls. So, for example, we had one swimming pool company that managed to reduce their claims from 1 per week to 1 per month. So that's quite a significant saving in the hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. And at last count, we reckon we're saving probably about £10 million a year of claims. So let's get back to the question then. So we've got a few people weighing in. So Robert on LinkedIn, his response was lots of questions. It was curious to see the discussion play out. Good question here. Who is we, and what is the unit of measurement that we're using to define the term that we're not so good at safety? Some firm Mark saying a firm no, doesn't agree. Good. Caitlin, I immediately started thinking, wait, are we? Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Youssef, when I saw the title, I thought about my old job. Oh dear, that doesn't sound too good. Here's an interesting perspective from Mark. I think everybody could be better at safety, but we're very good project managers, change managers, communicators, lean practitioners, etc. I like that thought. Good stuff. Andy, very interesting quote. Some businesses really are, which got me thinking where I've worked previously and currently. Good stuff. Stephen, hi. Greg, no, it's how H&S can be used that is poor. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Good stuff. Well, look, thank you guys. Thank you for joining. So, and it's good to get some initial feedback because clearly when we're doing these roundtables, the first challenge is let's get people in the room and let's get people in the discussion. So we need to have some titles that will do that. So thanks. So there are two sides to this coin. Okay. There's the side which says in response to the question, yes, we are, and there's the side that says no, we're not. And what we're probably going to see is that there's some passion on both sides. There's lots of arguments you can make for both sides as well. And what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to present some thoughts around both sides of the question. I'm not here to say that we are not very good. I'm not here to say that we're great. I'm here to sort of present both sides, and then we can open it up and see what we all think. So let's start with the yes we are side. So are we SHI something at safety? Yes we are. Who would support that? So SHP does awards every year, and in 2020 the award for most influential went to a lady called Hilda Palmer, who I'm not sure if she runs. I think she runs the Hazards campaign, and essentially what they do is they sort of try to point out the hazards in the workplace and perhaps to question some of the recording and the measurement that is done, because their view is that actually we're not as good as we are claiming that we are when it comes to keeping people safe and protected and secure at work. So now these data points are theirs, but I guess we could question them. But I suppose if SHP have given her this award, there must be some credibility behind these statements. So what they would say is there are 9 times as many deaths caused by work incidents than the HSE would say that there are. There are 4 times as many work illness deaths, around 60,000, than HSE would say. They estimate that the number of people made ill by work is about 5 times greater than the HSE estimate. So they're saying 6 million people a year are made ill by work. And from a COVID perspective, this was data from recently. 15 to 20,000 recorded deaths of workers from COVID-19, based on 12% of total deaths. So if you look at this and you go down this rabbit hole, and I'm not going to say I've gone down this rabbit hole into as much detail as I could, but there's certainly an argument here that perhaps we're not quite as good as we might have thought we were. If we think about my specialist area of slips and falls, here's just some data points to think about that might suggest that we're not quite as good as we perhaps thought we were. A broken bone every 3 minutes in the workplace, 300,000 A&E admissions a year from slips, 1.5 million NHS bed days, a dozen amputations. We do see deaths, we do see brain injuries. Typically, around a third of most sectors' accidents, injuries and claims. Over $1 billion of insurance claims each year, with £10,000 being the average claim cost. Tens of thousands of uninsured hidden costs for every accident. And we do see 6-figure criminal fines. So Tesco was fined almost $750,000 in 2020 after a slip and a broken hip. So looking at the bigger picture, we can see some data from Hilda. Looking at my area of slips and falls, we can see some data here, all of which suggest that there's potentially quite a lot of improvement that we could make. And I am going to open this up, guys. I can see some comments coming in, but we will definitely open this up as always. So just some I'm just giving you some info to stir the pot and get the discussion going. So that's an argument there from two perspectives, that perhaps we're not doing as good as we thought we were, or perhaps as good as we could do. Let's look at the other side of the coin then. Now, I imagine, obviously, the choice of wording that I used in this is quite strong. So I imagine most people on this would be on this side of no, we're not. Let's see what we think. So there's data here to show that there's been a reducing trend of fatal injuries in the workplace in Britain. The chart on the screen here shows 1981 to 2019, and we can see some ups and downs in odd years, but broadly speaking, a downward trend. If we look at the data, which I just couldn't find easily, from when we started collecting this information all the way through to now, there's a steadily declining trend, albeit it is sort of flatlining a little bit in the last few years. So based on this HC data, RIDDOR data, we're, to put it bluntly, we're killing fewer people at work. I guess that's a good thing, right? Let's try and set this into some context. So if you compare the UK to other European countries, and certainly if you compare it to the States and other, what's the best way of putting it, advanced economies, we are performing very, very well in comparison. So again, if we think about this as the world, perhaps there's a different answer to thinking about it in the sort of more niched area of the UK. You can see here, this is 2015 data, and our rate was 0.5 per 100,000 employees, whereas Spain was almost 2, France was getting on to 3.5. So comparatively speaking, the data would suggest that the UK is doing quite well. And if we look at injuries, there's also some trend analysis. The HC every year does its vital statistics, and they publish the trend analysis. So this chart here is estimated self-reported workplace non-fatal injuries per 100,000 workers. And again, from 2000 up until 2018, which is this particular chart, there's a nice steady decline. So if you look at this data, that would suggest we're doing pretty well, right? Let's have a look in my field then of slips and falls. And I mentioned I was going to talk about Network Rail. So this is a good one to put into context. So there was an article in 2019 which got quite a lot of traction. Excuse the pun, because I'm talking about slips, of a payout. I think the BBC did a Freedom of Information request to Network Rail, and they found that somebody using Paddington Station had slipped on what appeared to be pigeon poo and had got a £27,000 insurance claim payout. And what the BBC was saying in the article here was Network Rail have paid out £1 million in 5 years. Now, that might seem like a fairly high number of sort of slip, trip, fall type of claims. Actually, to me, I was shocked that it was that low. Now we actually support Network Rail. We slip test all of their stations, and so they are being more proactive than others. But if you think of the footfall, only £1 million of claims over 5 years seems to be pretty decent to me. But slips, trips, and falls certainly in the stations were the biggest cause, remain the biggest cause of accidents. Let's put this into some wider context then. Let's think about Waterloo. Waterloo Station is the busiest station, it's only in normal times, of the Network Rail managed stations. They manage 20 stations, and they're the 20 busiest stations, I guess, or certainly 20 biggest stations in the country. Waterloo's the busiest. The footfall in 2019 was 89 million people. And if you look at the claims data that the BBC got hold of from Network Rail, Waterloo would have, in a normal year, on average, about 6 claims. So again, let's put this into some context here. Are we doing well at safety or not? If we've got 89 million people using the station and we've only got 6 claims, that's a very, very, very small fraction of a percentage of people that are that appear to be getting hurt seriously enough to feel that they should lodge a personal injury claim. So if you look at it in that context, you'd say we're doing pretty well, right? So I've presented 2 sides to the argument. I'm going to give you some thoughts, and then let's open this up. Morning, Nick, in the chat on LinkedIn, and Phil as well. Hi, Phil. So here are some thoughts from me on this question. So are we something at safety? To me, the answer appears nuanced. I don't think that we could definitively say yes. I don't think we could definitively say no. There's arguments on both sides. We're probably somewhere in the middle, I guess. Perception to me is reality, and this is a good example of that. If you come from Hilda's perspective or the zero harm school of thought, you're going to look at this data in one way. If you're sitting there as a health and safety leader in a business and you know how much time and effort and dedication you've put into your policies and procedures and your safety culture and all this other stuff, then you're probably sitting there thinking, well, I reckon we're in a pretty good place. What about your board's perception? We talked a little bit about this last week in the roundtable. What are boards thinking about this data? How would they perceive these figures? Their perception is going to be slightly different. What about a court? If you end up in court, if you're Tesco, you ended up in court on a criminal prosecution for somebody slipping and breaking their hip in 2020. The case was in 2020, the accident was earlier. What did the court find versus what your perception is of, how well are we doing? What does your insurer think? And what does the HSE think? So there's all sorts of different perspectives on this. And I think we've got to bear that in mind as well. So again, the answer is going to vary depending on how we're looking at this. I think the other thing we should think about is this kind of micro versus macro perspective. So again, thinking about being in your shoes, if you are leading safety in a business and you've got 3 slips, let's say, in a year, that might appear okay to you. But probably when you hear that there's 300,000 people a year going to A&E after a slip, your view might be, well, that's not acceptable, that's not good enough, we should be doing better than that. So I think it's really important to set all of this into a wider context as well. It's hard to do that because you can only control what you can control, but you've got to be thinking slightly wider than just, I'm doing this is my business, this is my site. So I suppose in the round, overall, I would say that our performance is good. It's definitely, I can't say that we're the S word. But I suppose the question is, and it's a question that we've posed before on the roundtable, can we go from good to great? And how can we inspire people to want to do that? So thinking about these different perspectives, the different perceptions we've got, trying to think about the bigger picture. What else can we do to get people to think about going from good to great? I think it's hard to say we're we're not pretty good overall, but I'd be interested to get people's views. So that's it from me to set the scene and hopefully open this up to a wider discussion. So as always, if you're on the Zoom, go to reactions, raise your hand. If you're on LinkedIn, and there's a good number of people watching on LinkedIn, fire into the chat, and I will try to pick up on your questions as well. What do you think? Did you learn anything? Was there anything that changed your initial view? Can you see the other side to this? What lessons can we learn? And any other comments you've got. I'm just going to go into the chat and just see, but if anybody on the Zoom wants to wade in, then now's the time. Andy's raised a good point here. Hand on heart, how many leaders actively promote health and safety, physically get involved? Yeah, good point. Dave says the UK is generally seen as a leader in safety across the world, with other countries following our lead. Yeah, that's true. Certainly, if you think about how we, our legal system across all types of law is seen as one, certainly until this government, that was beyond repute, and so we have a legal framework, we have the regulator. That's a good model, and certainly all the Commonwealth countries would follow us as well. Is there anybody here that would like to come on board and give a defence for the fact that we are not very good? There's lots of comments going on in the chat, but I'd love some people to unmute and join me and chat this through. Andy, let me stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm good, Christian. Are you?
Yeah, very well.
Hi,
thanks.
guys. Yeah, good. I think I've put a couple of comments on there.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all around a business having the appetite and for driving safety culture, safety performance. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I've worked bloody damn hard. Sorry, to, you know, get people on the journey, to, you know, get businesses to understand where we need to be. So I wouldn't say we were SH1T. And you know, what we do with safety professionals. You know, at the end of the day, this is probably is one of the toughest, most loneliest professions to be in, because you're seen as the, you know, the clipboard and high vis guy, and you're a policeman and this, that, and the other. When actually, it's more than that. Yeah. So I very much think that, you know, we do a good job. We do try our damnedest, because we don't leave school and say, do you know what, I'm going to be a health and safety manager. You know, it's something that probably the majority of us have just fallen into. Pardon the pun. But yeah, so for me, and again, it is having those businesses to have the appetite to, you know, just not just the buzzwords. Safeties are number one, and this, that, and the other, and safeties are, you know, I'm very much around that safety should be a condition, and it should be it's a condition before we start anything. So, you know, we just need to work on that as a collective, and just keep up the good fight, really.
Yeah. Did you resonate with any of the contrary points? You know, what's your view on you know, looking at the aggregating all the numbers and saying, well, look, actually, you know, how good are we? Not that we're terrible.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us really think we're terrible, but I think,
No.
you know, there's still quite a long way to go. There's quite a lot of improvement we could still do.
But when you look at the figures, and I picked up on the 300,000 went to A&E. Now, when you consider the population, how much of that population goes to work, then actually those figures are pretty pretty damn low. It's obviously 300,000 more than we want, but when you look at the whole picture, I think we are putting the processes in place that will allow us to improve that anyway. So.
Yeah, and that's why I set the Waterloo example into context, because I think if you look at it like that, you know, you can look at the same story of £1 million of claims paid out, and if you didn't know much, you think, oh, that's horrendously bad, and then if you actually drill down into it,
absolutely,
90 million people and only 6 claims. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, it's hard to be much better than that, I guess.
I'd be happy with 6 claims in my business. So, in the business I work for. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Andy, and thank you for being brave and jumping on. Because what always happens with this is that it just takes that first person to come on, and then somebody like Greg puts their hand up next. Morning, Greg.
Sorry, just getting my video started. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, just picking up on the comparisons. I don't know, are people aware of ESNES, the European Survey on Enterprises on New and Emerging Risks? And they do a survey every 5 years that looks across Europe. And if you looked at the 2008 and 2012 figures, we were right over on the left-hand side. While the comparisons aren't exactly direct, one looked at policies, one looked at information, one looked at risk assessments, we were right at the high end. So it was top left to bottom right in terms of EU performance. What has been happening, though, is that everyone else has been coming up to us. We've actually now I think we're 5th or 6th on the last list, which is the 2019 report. But that's not because we've gone down, it's because everybody else has started to come up to the same levels.
Yeah.
And in looking at it, it's not best isn't the word to use, but in terms of lowest rates of fatal injury, UK were right at the bottom, as you identified in 2008, 2012 with the previous 2 reports. But for a 2019 comparison, Holland and Germany had the same figure, and Holland, for the first time of any European nation in the last 15 years, actually had a lower rate of fatal incidents per workers. So it is improving everywhere. With regards to whether we're bad at it, we're not. It's how it's applied. And unfortunately, as Andy identified, while there are an awful lot of good professionals, there are an awful lot of other people who believe they understand health and safety very well, but actually don't. And I'll just give you an example of that we had recently, which was on window restrictors in a school. And they were complaining about how much money they'd had to spend on putting them in. A lot of them they put in on windows that were 10 feet off the ground, that they'd had to get a platform in to put, and immediately you just start to peel that back and think about what you were doing. What is the risk of a window that's 10 feet up in the air, of somebody climbing up to that? And it's managing it on that basis. It needs to be risk and it needs to be thought out.
Versus the risk of having to put a platform in to put the guarding there, yeah. Greg, Michelle in the chat was asking if you could share, when we've finished chatting, share a link to the website in the report.
Yeah, I think if you there's 3 of them. If you Google ESNER, it's ESENER, and it's the European Survey on Enterprises of Enterprises on New and Emerging Risks. And they do a 5-yearly report, but it does make interesting reading. The other comparison, I can't remember where it came from. The fatal injuries one is a separate document, but I know the HSE used it in one of their pieces of communication either earlier this year or at the end of last year, where they were doing a fatal injury comparison. I can dig it out if you want me to, and again put a link in the chat. But if you just type ESENER health and safety into any search engine, you will come up with that data. And as I said, they've done 3 reports.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And Ali was just saying on LinkedIn that he's had a similar experience in schools, and the head was reluctant due to the cost of it. So
yeah, it's managing real risk, not perceived risk.
Always good. Andy.
Hi. Basically, when I worked in higher education, especially at Loughborough University, the departments had their own sub-policies, and the way they reacted to near-miss incidents and real accidents was very divergent. Near-miss incidents tended to be recorded as such, as a statistic, and not really properly investigated, even though the consequences could have been very serious, especially on the 2 incidents I dealt with in the last few years. And basically, their attitude was, well, it's happened, it was dealt with, but they didn't really follow through. And basically, having such a offhand approach is not good. The only time the university got really involved when there were claims being made against them, and that's when they took out the artillery to try and defend their case. But in a lot of cases, that didn't work. So the claims went through and the insurance premiums went through the roof. There we go.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I think that's something that that sort of proactivity versus reactivity is a big challenge, and I think we probably should be doing a session about that actually soon. Oh wow, there's a massive Martin's written War and Peace in the chat here. Loving it. It's quite hard to stay on top of all the comments when there's so many going on, which is great to see. What do people think about the point I made around kind of the macro versus the micro? Because I think it's quite easy to sort of look at your own business and feel as if you're doing a good job and you've got everything in place, and actually you probably are doing a pretty good job. But obviously then we've got the challenge of, if we aggregate all of this data out, perhaps it appears that in some ways we're not doing as good a job as we might do. I don't know if anybody's got any perspectives on that they would be up for sharing. And I'm going to call on Warren to kind of join in this as well, because he and I had a pre-chat about this yesterday. Not that particular point, but this overall topic. So I'm going to get him to unmute himself and join in a minute. I'm just prepping you, Warren.
No, that'll be fine. Let me move that so we can talk. I mean, I think the discussions are pretty good that I'm hearing. There's obviously a lot of mixed feelings across the different workplaces. I think there's quite a lot of things people really need to think about. What influence they have at work, who are the key influencers within the workplace, and how do you align your strategies with the management at your company? Because every company obviously have got the ultimate goal. They want to be successful. They want to be the best in the fields that they operate in, and it's how do we align our strategy to give value to that end goal. And it's even more key now with the changes in law, obviously, that bring things like corporate manslaughter and also the increasing fines for organizations when they get it wrong. So it's really important we get our job right. And it's how do we influence those people? It's kind of, and I get it, there are organizations where there's this blasé approach and they're just ticking boxes, and as long as we've got risk assessments and we've got a guy making sure things are happening and we meet with the guys and talk to them about safety, we're doing our bit. But it's a bigger piece than that. It's really about hearts and minds. It's really about engaging with your people, being personable. I'm not seen as the policeman, the ogre. I certainly don't think I am anyway in my organization. It's very much more I'm a colleague who they can turn to, who they can get guidance from. I'm a coach, a mentor. I believe actually I'm a leader within my area of expertise. And my senior management team actually turn to me and approach me and say, I need to improve this around the training of my staff. How do I do this? What should I be looking at? How do I organize this element? And I've joined a company that was built in 1968, and I've joined them 2.5 years ago. And like everybody in this call, have steered the company through a pandemic, which was a mind-blowing experience. And through that, not been able to do too much, but now slowly we're being able to step back into the I suppose the trenches in some ways and start rebuilding the battleground and making it safer for everyone. Because health and safety is a minefield, and a lot of the people in these senior positions haven't got those expertise, and that's why they rely on us to help with that. And that's the sort of thing I would say to people. What are your key influencers in your workplace? How do you engage with them? Because they're the people that will make it happen. And that's where your key alliances need to be made. I mean, I don't know, other people might have other views, and it might be difficult in other workplaces because they may not have that collaborative, growing improvement. I mean, the company I'm with are, I think, world-class manufacturers in terms of the manufacturing side, but the safety side needs lifting, and that's why I'm here. That's what we're starting to do.
Greg in the chat has said that they've been doing more, significantly more senior management training for health and safety over the last 5 years than they have done at any time previously. So I think that echoes and supports what you were just saying there, Warren. I liked what you said, that it's a minefield, and I think I suppose the challenge for health and safety professionals is how to approach having those kind of difficult conversations, isn't it? Around, if the culture of the senior management team is not aligned to your way of thinking, how can you influence and persuade them to do things differently, and how can we I suppose give them an incentive to do so, using probably a bit of a carrot and a stick approach. You mentioned there the fine levels and claims and things like that, but it's also, I guess, the positive side of things as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's also this element of the type of individual you are, and your approach as well, because we're all different. We all have our own personalities and traits, and it can be very easy to say to someone, you're doing that wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. Why are you doing that? Whereas it's a lot better to actually be inquisitive and to understand why someone works in a certain way, and just saying, I've just seen you doing such and such on the job. Could you just explain to me exactly what it is you're doing and the reasoning behind that? I've never seen it done like that before, and I'd like to understand what it is you're trying to achieve, and get an understanding from their perspective. And actually, it's almost like walk a mile in a man's shoes to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and then within that, you can question the logic, and you say, well, have you thought about this risk, or have you thought about that risk? Did you consider that reaction could happen, or this reaction could happen? And actually get them to think about their perceptions of what they're doing, because sometimes they've just not thought of those things. And then it becomes collaborative. It's not the policeman telling somebody that they've broken a rule. It's somebody actually just saying, have you thought this through properly? And it becomes more questioning. I suppose I said to you when we spoke yesterday, it's almost like you've got to be a bit of a politician, and I'm not a politician in any way, but it's that kind of an approach. It's that more inquisitive, collaborative conversation. I don't want to take up the whole chat, so I'm very mindful of that as well.
No, it's good, and thank you for coming along. And giving some of your perspectives. Matthew on LinkedIn here has said, with an SME, raising the point about different sizes of businesses, I suppose. So within an SME where you've got a bit high business pressure, perhaps it's a bit different than where you've got a bigger organisation that theoretically has more ability to resource and do things around this to be more proactive. So yeah, interesting perspective. I think it's always looking at different sides to this, isn't it? There's no one single answer, I suppose, to the question, which is why it makes a good topic, because we can all have a different view. I'm going to quickly just share what we've got coming up in terms of the next round table. Where are we? Let me just get this sorted, because I'm having a week off. I'm going away next week, so sadly my wife will not countenance me doing a safety roundtable from Italy on the beach next week. But we've got if you don't know, every September I do a campaign which I call Sliptember, and so the roundtables for the next few weeks are going to be a bit more slip focused. So on the 7th of September, I'm going to be talking about the slip problem, which is an acronym for some of the misperceptions around slips. So I'd love for you to join me on that. And in terms of Sliptember, just as an ask, I'd love to, for anybody watching this, joining in, to reach out to me if you feel there's some way that you could help. So, for example, could we do a webinar together? I'm doing a webinar. I'm doing loads of webinars in Sliptember. I'm doing one for IIRSM. I'm doing one for National Care Home safety body. I'm doing one with Saferpedia in the US. I'm doing one with HC People. So if we could do a webinar together, that would be great. Is there any way you'd be able to join on the bandwagon and help us to publicise this and get and raise awareness about slip safety? Or if you've got any ideas on what could be done to support this, then I'd love to have a chat. So that's my soft ask from everybody today. Now we're coming up to 22. Does anybody else have any other comments that they'd like to pop in? There's tons going on in the chat, but everybody's a bit shy today. It seems to unmute themselves. Steve, if you're still on, are you still on, or have you gone? I think he may have gone. I was going to ask Steve to give us an insurer perspective. Greg, you've got your hand up.
Hello again. Yeah, it's just going back to the point I made that you highlighted about senior management training, and it is what everybody's been saying. It's about getting them involved, but how we do it. And certainly the huge increase we've had in talking to senior managers and directors was as a result of the sentencing guidelines that came in on the 1st of Feb 2016. And the initial thing they saw were fines going up dramatically, and therefore what do we need to do about it? So in everything, finance does talk. But just on that, one of the more recent interesting things that has happened again, which I don't know if anybody's picked up, but in the line of Legionella, there was actually two directors from an organisation in the Midlands got suspended jail sentences. And that's made an awful lot of people start to look at again and reevaluate what they're doing in terms of having a lot of areas that are tangential. So a lot of the statutory inspections, Legionella, those kind of things, where they're pushed under third-party contractors, and the organisation actually loses a little bit of control. And it's about now, how do we gain that back? Because ultimately they're responsible. Those who create the risk are responsible for managing it.
Yes, abdicating your responsibility doesn't work, does it? In reality, no. Sadly.
But it's how we use that to promote them what they're doing in terms of developing that culture and getting people on board and just getting them to ask questions, because if they see something as being important, invariably the rest of the organisation does.
Dave in the chat's just said he managed to convince our business owner to put all senior managers and supervisors, 17 of them, on the IOSH Managing Safely course. That's great, Dave. Are you happy to unmute and just talk a bit about that?
Morning, Christian and everybody.
Hiya. Talk to us about how you did that, because that's a great positive step, I think.
Yeah, I work for a small to medium enterprise in Barnsley. I'm the group health safety manager. I do the job on my own, and I think sometimes we do come across as being the policeman. And convincing our business owner was relatively easy. That we have to start health and safety at the top of the business. And we can put in policies and procedures, but if we don't give people the correct training and support to do the job properly, they generally find out that, we end up falling on our knees and on our swords. So we commissioned a local business, and we actually took the people out of the business for 3 days in groups of 4. So it was manageable for the business to cope without the management in place and deliver it all that way. And everybody passed, and everybody's come back and said, what a change how positive they can now manage their areas. So it actually frees me up from doing the day-to-day mundane, walking around, checking up, being the policeman, to be able to manage health and safety at a better level and support the teams across the group. It's really getting the senior management to buy into where we all want to be. I think, as I said before, we always think that we're really, really good at safety. And I personally, when I then get the accident form or some minor incident that's coming, I think, oh, maybe I've missed something. But generally, when we go and look at it, it's normally somebody, wanted to cut a corner or just do things a little bit different, and it just brings focus back on. But having everybody trained at that level really, really does support the function of health and safety across the group.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a great example. So thank you for sharing that, Mark.
Good morning, everyone. I hope can you hear me?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Fantastic, lovely. To be honest, I do completely reiterate Dave's point. It's key that your senior management team get a full understanding of the risks, the hazards that within their industry. So within the construction industry, we have a site manager safety training scheme. It's a 5-day course. It's extremely thorough and detailed. And I've insisted that all of our senior management team, including the managing director, attended that. So they themselves have got an understanding of of everything that's going on in a particular site. If you can't give them that information, they just won't understand it. And it needs to be driven from the top. And I always go back to one of my first statements of engagement. We're all different, we're all human, and we all perceive things in a different manner. And how you engage with everyone from the top all the way down to our labourers, our supply chain, our gangers is critical in ensuring that you develop your culture within the organisation. It's key. I love Bill Gates' statement. 2 biggest things for an organisation to improve is communication and teamwork. And that can only be achieved by everybody within that company understanding the whole aspect of what we do and the dangers and actually the consequences. If we don't do it, we're going to hurt somebody, and that is the last thing that we would like.
Yeah, and like you, in my area, I have to go sort of transition from talking to boards to talking to cleaning staff and kitchen porters and everything in between. And you're right that it's everybody. The beauty of safety is it's something everybody can buy into, because, as you say, people don't want to be get hurt themselves or hurt other people. But the way that you have to communicate and drive that sort of teamwork and that engagement with the different types of people is very, very different, and that's a skill in and of itself, isn't it?
It's difficult, it's challenging, but at the same time, love it. I treat everybody on site as my child. I've got to give them the right information, instruction, and knowledge in the hope that they will go and do the right thing. And if I don't, I've got to go and find another job. It's as simple as that. Yeah,
and that's a great way of looking at it. Great, good stuff. Michelle.
Yeah. Hi, thanks. Great session. I suppose I would just want to look from the other side. I get a lot of support. So I work for a company where we have a real eclectic mix of what we do. We have home workers, we have embedded employees, we have people going out to sites, so they'll go onto vessels, into dockyards, things like that. But we also have a lot of people who will sit behind a desk and work all day, because we're consultants as well. And the problem I have is I can get the senior leaders, I can get our executive team, I can get our board on IOSH courses, and everybody walks away like we all would, going, oh gosh, yes, that was really useful. Gosh, I've learned loads of amazing things. I hadn't realised X, Y, and Z. And then the day job kicks in and the world gets busy again. And the problem I have is they don't continue to walk the walk and talk the talk, because everything's got busy again. And the people that go to site as individual employees know it's dangerous and do the right thing, because we don't have accidents every single day. We are, within the mix, and we can definitely get better, but we do very dangerous things, but we don't have the stats showing that we're very bad at health and safety. And therefore I think that means that in general people think, oh, it will be okay.
Yeah.
So I can send people on the training courses just like you can do the horse to water thing, but it's how do we then get that follow up so that when we're driving the fact that you do need the risk assessment, you do need to bring your PPE in for maintenance. I need that senior leadership backing. It needs to be everybody, and it needs to be like the vein through our business, and and I've got a few senior leaders on that journey with me, but I haven't got everybody because, hey, we only sit in an office where we have had broken legs with people falling downstairs and burns from the kettle and things like that. So that's where my journey is. It's trying to get people to see it every day rather than just within the week of doing the training course.
Yeah, I suspect that you're not alone with that kind of feeling, and I suppose the good thing from what you've said is that you've got some people coming along with you and you're not fighting that uphill battle, because I think a lot of people would maybe feel as if they're struggling to even get one person, or not everybody, but some people will feel as if they're really fighting that uphill battle and they can't get anybody from the senior management team on board. So the fact you've got some is showing that you're doing things, you're doing some good stuff, and it's just keeping that momentum going, isn't it? I think this is the perennial challenge, isn't it, really? How can we keep the momentum going? How can we engage these people in the long term? And again, like we said with Mark, it's engaging with different people in different ways, and so it becomes quite a big beast to try and manage that, I suppose.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yusuf, how are you today?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I would like to make some. I'm really good. Just came back from my vacation, so getting back to work. So I would like to make a general comments, in fact, on what everyone have been saying. So I would like to start with the what everyone is talking about training senior managers and so on. In fact, if you combine what Michelle, Mark, and I think it's Greg who managed to, or Dave, I don't remember, managed to get his senior managers to train in IOSH training and courses and so on. The key is, in fact, once you've done these trainings and so on, afterwards, like you said, Michelle, the work kicks in. The best idea or the best way is safety conversations, and to the EHS managers and the safety managers, just like to make, how can I say it, communicate better with these senior managers. Like Mark said, communication, by implementing this type of communication and putting in place safety conversations and taking these senior managers on, showing them the importance not only of the training that they had, but how they can use it, and they don't have to look at it as like it's another task they have to do and supervise. No, it's the EHS officer or EHS manager or the safety manager to do that, but then he will accompany them and will take them, I will walk the walk with you, not you alone. So then they can say, oh, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not gonna be like, it's gonna be me. And like everyone said, and like Warren said, the EHS manager will not be seen as the policeman or the bad guy here. So taking these matters at hands and putting in place some sort of like meetings of 10 minutes meetings and talks with the team and the managers, it doesn't take any time. 10 minutes is nothing in our weekly tasks, in fact, in a weekly time. So just understanding them and just let your employees be heard and see what they think. And I think the best, like in the construction industry, for example, they are the best eyes that you can have on the field and to better understand the risk that they are facing every day, because we are living in a world that have new technologies, constant evolving materials that we can work with and so on. So risks are constantly evolving. So the risk assessment like 1 year ago will not be maybe applied 1 year after. So we have to, it's really quite risky, and you have like I don't know who said that, we have to be politicians sometimes to to approach our managers. But yeah, and this is one part of my comments. The other safety conversations, like communication, is really important everywhere, in fact. The other side, I would like to talk about the statistics that and why everyone is getting like less, which is good, in fact, less injuries and less accidents and so on. But what I would like to see is like the next report in 2024, I think is gonna go out, or 23, because we had COVID, we had a lot of complications that have been, and maybe the risk will be seen differently now with the global pandemic that we had these couple of years. But I think the managers now are, they realize the importance of risk, not only because of COVID, not only because of safety and so on. They are thinking about, I think, the new trend that you are having now, ESG. So, so making your company more attractive, not only from an environmental point of view, but also, hey, you can work safely with us. No, don't be afraid. Come with us. We are good. Your mental health, we care about it, and so on. So there is this trend now, and I am really scared that's going to be like a small trend. Make yourself attractive, come here, and then we're going to forget about what we said. So I really liked your title. Are we S 3 stars in safety today? Yeah, so this is my comment, and I hope really that what safety people are gonna do now is, and companies and managers are gonna be like really motivated to change ideas and anyway, so on. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Youssef, and you see you're energized. You're energized after your holiday, which is great. So I'm hoping I'll feel the same when I come back in 10 days' time after a nice trip to Italy. I think the one of the things I am going to wrap this up because it's almost 10, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But I think one of the challenges of kind of the ESG agenda and the well-being agenda and the environmental agenda and all these other things is that we're piling more and more stuff onto our plates, and I suppose the challenge there is, can we juggle all of those priorities? Can we spin all of those plates? And then does that mean that we might, if we're doing that, be able to get more influence in the business, but we might also then find that we're struggling to keep up the high standards we've achieved when it comes to safety. So yeah, certainly an interesting balancing act. Okay, guys, look, thank you very much for joining today. It was a bit of a disruptive and controversial title designed to provoke some discussion, and hopefully that's what we've done. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts. There was tons going on in the comments as well, so I really do appreciate that. Going to see you again in a couple of weeks for the next roundtable when we're getting into Sliptember. As I said, if you think you can help in any way with raising awareness on slip safety in the month of September, then I'd love to partner up with you and see if there's something we can do, whether it's for your business, a bit of a campaign, whether it's webinars, whether it's whatever it might be. I'd love to do that with you as well. So thank you very much for joining. We're not SHI something at safety, but we can still improve, and let's keep on having these conversations and keep on driving that change and driving that improvement over the weeks and months and years to come. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks all.